What's the most uncomfortable situation you've ever had to sit through? In high school, there was a guy who openly had a crush on me. From the very first day, he made his feelings clear. But his approach quickly became overwhelming and uncomfortable for me. He would ask me out several times a day, always in front of my friends. Unfortunately, my friends would encourage him, thinking it was all in good fun. They had known him since elementary school, and I was the new kid on the block. Whenever I declined his offers, he wouldn't take no for an answer. Instead, he started spreading rumors around school that I was dating and being intimate with various boys, none of which was true. I had no interest in dating anyone at my school. Each time I tried to confront him about the rumors, he'd brush it off as a joke and tell me I needed to lighten up, which only added to my frustration. The situation reached a peak during my junior year at the homecoming dance. He was a senior, and it would be his last homecoming dance. The day before the event, he told one of my friends that he had invited me to the dance, and I had accepted. This was a complete fabrication. He hadn't asked me, nor had I planned to attend the dance. Nonetheless, he went on about how he had spent all his money on tickets, gas, new shoes, and a corsage, trying to make the evening special. My friend, believing his story, was thrilled for him, and even helped him get ready for the dance. She also spread the word, so all of our friends were under the impression that I was his date. He told everyone that I would be dropped off by my parents at the dance. Consequently, he and a group of our friends ended up waiting outside for me for 3 hours. Each time someone suggested he go inside, he would tear up and ask for just 5 more minutes. When I arrived at school the following Monday, I was met with a wave of hostility. Everyone was furious with me. My friends wouldn't speak to me, and I found myself isolated, eating lunch alone without any understanding of the reason behind their anger. It wasn't until 3 days later that a girl I hadn't spoken to before asked me why I had stood the guy up. I decided to confront him directly when he was alone. I asked him what he had done, and his response was to start laughing hysterically. He said that if I agreed to go out with him, he would tell everyone it was just a misunderstanding. I chose never to speak to him again after that. The whole ordeal permanently damaged several of my friendships, as my friends believed I had mistreated someone they considered sweet, all because of a series of lies he had orchestrated. My cousin was about to turn 30, and our entire extended family, uncles, cousins, around 30 people, were gathering at my grandparents' house for a celebration. Tragically, just a couple of hours before the party, my grandfather suffered a heart attack. By the time I arrived, the EMTs had already come and gone, and sadly, my grandfather had passed away. As we waited for the funeral home to arrive, we gathered around him, offering prayers and tributes, as is customary in our culture. Amid this somber atmosphere, the situation took an unexpected turn, due to my aunt, the eldest daughter of my grandfather, and the mother of the birthday cousin. Known for her narcissistic tendencies, she insisted that we proceed with the birthday celebration. She set up a stool to hold the birthday cake right over my grandfather's body. Despite her daughter's protests, my aunt made her cut the cake there, while we all sat around singing "Happy Birthday" through tears that were hard to keep at bay. To add to the surreal scene, they used an enormous butcher knife for the cake, which couldn't help but evoke bizarre and unsettling images. However, in an odd way, the sheer absurdity of the moment provided a distraction from our grief, making the entire experience strangely memorable. It was an unusual blend of mourning and celebration, one that somehow, against all odds, brought a peculiar comfort amidst the sadness. During the summer following my senior year of high school, I entered into a relationship with my first girlfriend. We quickly grew close, spending many days together, and she became a frequent visitor at my home, much to my mother's delight. However, as college began and we faced the challenge of long distance, I realized it wasn't going to work for me, and we parted ways. I soon met someone new at college, and as the relationship developed, she eventually became my wife. The twist came when I brought her home for the first time during the Christmas break. Unbeknownst to me, my mother had recently offered shelter to my ex-girlfriend, who had been evicted from her place. So, when I arrived home with my new girlfriend, intending for a warm family introduction and a cozy overnight stay, I walked into an incredibly awkward scenario. There I was, introducing my new partner not only to my parents, but also to my ex, who was now living under the same roof. Upon the death of my grandmother, I was immediately approached by her 3 stepdaughters. They pressed me to give them all of the family photographs. These images mostly captured life after their own childhoods and focused on her own children, my father and uncle, featuring scenes from the family farm and its livestock. The central figure among the stepdaughters, my middle step-aunt, was certain that the collection contained overlooked photos of her own son who had died prematurely. In reality, these daughters of my grandfather were quite difficult and self-centered, driven by a belief that they were due a significant inheritance. They had anticipated a large fortune upon my grandmother's demise, but failed to understand that they were merely entitled to my grandfather's initial investment, while my grandmother had used the earnings for living expenses. An investment that was substantial in 1975 had not grown by 2003 due to these withdrawals. Now seniors themselves, the 3 women unleashed their frustrations on me in that tense moment, voicing bitter complaints about perceived neglect and stolen inheritances, focused intensely on reclaiming those photographs. As the confrontation escalated, my father and brother quietly left the room, leaving me alone to face the emotional outburst. I had to endure the painful scene of my 3 elderly relatives bitterly weeping and shouting about the injustices of life and their desperate need to retrieve these photographs, clinging to them as a symbol of gaining something from the past. My parents were immigrants from India who settled in the United States in the late 1960s, both pursuing careers in medicine. I arrived in the world in 1980s, marking over a decade since their migration. I had 2 older siblings, also US-born. When I came along, my mother chose to pause her professional life to dedicate herself to raising us. Consequently, she became a familiar face at school functions and the main point of contact for our educational matters. In my 3rd grade year, I was quite the troublemaker. During a disciplinary meeting that included my teacher and my mother, the teacher daringly questioned my mother's understanding of our educational system. "Are you familiar with how homework is managed here? Your son consistently neglects his science assignments. Do you have the educational background to assist him?" My mother's reply was both cool and cutting. "Actually, I am a licensed medical doctor here. It's curious you should ask because there's a saying in my field about those who can't practice medicine end up elsewhere. Apparently, the same can be said for teaching." Her response silenced the teacher instantly. Yet, I continued to be a target of her displeasure to such an extent that my mother warned of taking legal action and exposing the discriminatory behavior to the media. That teacher did not return the next academic year. Several years ago, I worked as a cashier at a grocery store with a friend who is quite attractive and has a friendly demeanor. Unfortunately, this sometimes attracted the wrong kind of attention. On the day of this incident, I was assigned to bagging while my friend handled the cash register. An elderly regular, who usually opted for the express line due to his few items, decided to wait in my friend's longer line instead. When it was his turn, the interaction started off normally. He asked my friend how she was doing, and she responded with a light-hearted, "Good, just ready to go home." She mentioned she'd be off work at 7, which was in about an hour. Seizing the opportunity, the old man quickly offered to take her out to dinner right after her shift. She politely declined his offer, but he persisted, complimenting her appearance, which made both of us uncomfortable. Seeing my friend's discomfort, I intervened by offering to take over her register so she could take a break. Grateful, she stepped away while I tried to wrap up the transaction with the man. He continued to make comments about her looks and inquired if she was single. To deter him, I lied that she was engaged. He asked about her favorite flowers, ignoring my attempts to finalize the purchase by stating his total repeatedly. The situation escalated as he insisted on waiting for my friend to return to pay. With a line forming behind him, our manager approached to resolve the delay. The old man claimed he was just waiting to pay so he could ask my friend out again. Our manager, seeing the disruption, informed him that she was on a break and would not be available soon. He reluctantly paid and left, but not before telling me to inform her that he would be back at 7 p.m. to pick her up for their date. Concerned for her safety, our manager decided to have me accompany her to her car at the end of her shift. As anticipated, the old man was in the parking lot, having spruced himself up for the supposed date. He approached us as we walked to her car, insisting she join him. My friend reiterated her fabricated engagement and her need to leave, but he was persistent. At this point, our manager intervened more forcefully, and when the man refused to leave, he called the police. The police arrived, heard our account, and after speaking with the man, decided to issue him a trespass warning and ensured he left the premises before allowing my friend to safely drive away. This experience left a lasting impression on all of us, especially my friend, who was understandably shaken. The store implemented safety measures for her, requiring her to call upon arrival each day so someone could escort her inside and back to her car after her shift. This ordeal has made me wary of seemingly benign interactions, particularly from older men towards younger women, understanding now how quickly they can turn uncomfortable or even threatening.